Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Evolve with Emily show. I am your host, Emily Hayden, and today we have on Kenneth Whitacre. He is the CEO and founder of AuthentiK. AuthentiK is a brand whose sole purpose is to elevate the individual so that we, in turn, can elevate the community around us. Welcome to today's show, Kenneth. How are you today?
Very good. How are you?
I'm doing great. We have a lot of external things happening in the environment that people on the podcast will probably hear. So we're just going to go with the flow. We have yard guys trying to come in
Yes.
right as I speak.
Yes.
But that's part of, I feel like, just learning to flow with life, right? You have all these unexpected things happen and pop up. And the more you can learn to just kind of release control of all the things you don't have control over, the easier life gets because you realize, like, why stress over the little things anyways, right?
Agreed. Agreed. And I think it's a great opportunity to kind of give a real representation of what us as business owners experience. Like it all looks good when the podcast goes perfect and everything's great. And in actuality, like you've got the yard guy behind you, and I'm in a coffee shop, and I think we make it work.
Yeah, it's so true. So, yeah, thanks for being flexible and going with the flow. I'd like to start the show off today by asking you, what does it mean to you to be authentic? And what was the inspiration for this being your brand?
Yeah, I think the power for me and the importance of me being authentic is I get to choose or decide to show up in my life every day in a way that gives me energy. I mean, just sitting here, I'm already getting chills talking about it because if I can wake up and I'm happier in my skin or happier who I show up as a husband or happier in the way I show up in my community, then getting up, there's this reason just to breathe more oxygen in, and there's reason to find more things that give us purpose and give us drive to want to continue to share ourselves with the world. I think if we're a version of ourselves that wants to keep us hidden, that's all we're doing is hiding the glory and the brightness and the light that we have. And we're not sharing that with the world. And I think the world needs more of light, whether that be from anybody, just more light in general, I think is a really good cardinal rule.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I love the way that you share that because it sounds to me like you, and I'd love to hear from you. It sounds like you may have had experience of the opposite of being the person that wanted to hide or to not share that light that you have inside. So if so, what did that look like for you? And how were you able to remove the blocks from feeling like you wanted to hide to being confident enough to show who you actually are?
I didn't always have dreads or tats, or if I had the opportunity, or you were to see me out in public, I wear flip flops just about everywhere, and I paint my toenails. And so for me, it's a scenario of I get to show up in this world in a way that makes me feel good and pretty and things. And there was a time when I was army cut, and I stuck to a very regimented expectation of what was put on me as a young person. And so I tried to sit in that maybe version of myself that was told it could fit in a lane, but it wasn't my lane. It wasn't the lane that I wanted to really continue down. And then when I started deciding that dreads were okay or tats were okay or things like that, then I found my wife, and my wife really valued who I was. And then I found a community who really dug who I was. And then I found myself that the more I became authentic, I actually noticed that people got more permission to do it themselves. And then you'd see people change themselves a little bit into this brighter version. And now we're, gosh, 6 years into this authentic journey. And it's like the only people I interact with now are people who love themselves, or they're starting a new journey, or they're started a new passion, or they did something that they haven't been doing in a while. And if I can just simply be that, like, yep, perfect.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying is really important because energy like that, it feeds off of each other. I know for myself in certain communities, when I get around other individuals that are truly like going after something that they're really passionate about, that lights them up from the inside out, it inspires me, it motivates me, and I leave feeling like excited to do my thing, even if it has nothing to do with them. So it's interesting because I really think that in life, there are different energies and frequencies that everybody operates on. And what's fun is when you're able to tap into that frequency of creation and authenticity and really owning who you are and why you were created, it's like this magical force that I swear just drives everything and makes life so much better. It makes things so much sweeter. So I'm curious, how were you able to find a community? And community could have been just maybe one person at the beginning, two people at the beginning, but how were you able to find community of people that align with all these things that we're talking about? Because often the listeners and friends that I have, clients, they'll ask, hey, I'm on this path of personal development and this personal journey, but I can't find other people that are on the same path. So, what would be your advice to them for being able to cultivate friendships and relationships of people that truly are embodying that same kind of light that you embody?
What a great question, Emily. You're rocking on these today.
Oh, thank you.
Hmm, I think I started with myself as my first community. Like if I was okay with my community, like the person who woke up in the morning or the person who was tired or the person who was energized, if that was the first community that I worked on and I was okay with, if my community was the one that was good and I didn't have anyone else support me for an extended period of time, I at least had myself and I was 1000% beautiful with who I was. And then all of a sudden, maybe I lost friends or old coworkers or old whatever that used to fit a version that I didn't want. So I had to also accept that I was going to lose some before I was going to gain some. And then when I realized maybe if I met 100 people, I might only keep three. Those three were the most impactful, beautiful, most refreshing, energetic. And I lost the other 97. Like that wasn't easy either. But the three I found they're still lifelong. They're still there. They're at my weddings. They're who I call when I celebrate. They're who I call when I struggle. A family member has a health issue. Those are the people I call. Like the three out of those 100, that was my community that I ended up focusing on, was not necessarily the 97 I lose, but the three I keep. Now they get all of me. They get just energy and love and support. And I don't have to spread myself so thin across not beautiful relationships. I got these new three that are just amazing.
That is such a good point. Like you mentioned, that often we have to go through this period of shedding the parts of us that are no longer us, which sometimes means the people that were attached to a part of our identity that actually doesn't match who we really are. And it doesn't make anyone bad or good, better or worse. It just means that you actually were never truly aligned at your core. And that can be hard to go through. There can be a little bit of a grieving process. I myself have had to, I feel like, grieve different parts of my identity that I was so attached to that, like, as I grow and as I'm evolving, I'm realizing that's not me. That's not actually the authentic version of me. That was how I tried to find me, and it was beautiful for what it was, and I appreciate it, but now I can set that down and I can be me. And I just want to echo what you said about having those friendships. The way that you described those friendships, I want the listeners to go back and listen to the way that you described them, because you said, like, so loving and powerful and free and energetic and just all of the adjectives that you use to describe that relationship, which are friendships and, maybe family or relationships. I think that is how we should feel in our most authentic connections. And I think what that will do is hold up a mirror to any of the relationships in our lives that are quite the opposite of that. So, can you speak to that a little bit when you recognize that you are giving your energy and a lot of it, and you're feeling drained, and you're really recognizing that these relationships don't make you feel what you just mentioned, light and inspired and full of breath and full of life? They're not fulfilling. How do you make that decision? How do you empower yourself to start to value your time and your energy enough in order to set a boundary, or maybe like, falter out of those relationships a little bit? How can people start to be empowered to value their energy in a better way?
When I started deciding that I wanted to have high level or high impactful or true relationships, I had to start asking what I actually needed to bring to the table also. And if I could hold myself to a standard of, I know I wanted to have a good listener, or I wanted to have someone who didn't hold my faults against me, or I wanted to have someone who loved me for the authentic version of me, or I wanted someone who, could give me good, unbiased advice because they truly want like the best for me. They truly want the greatest version of myself. And now when I talk to my community, or I talk to my wife, or I talk to those, me as who I decide to be, I'm going to be the person who holds you to your highest standard of who you want to be because you've communicated it. So then when I started going, I need to hold myself to a higher standard. And then I want this out of a relationship. Then I only accepted the people who were willing to give me back those things. If you're not willing to be a good listener, or you're not willing to be unbiased, or you're not be willing to not hold my faults against me, you're showing me that you aren't the version that I should keep in my life. Like, I think people really give us a lot more signs, signals, flags if we would just open our eyes and really see what they're giving us. Because my wife, my friendships, my coworkers, like, our relationships are so solid that it's almost like, if that can't be brought to the table, then I'm not even going to give my energy to you. Like, you're showing me already. It's almost like I hate to say an earned game, but if I was to go to my wife and ask for something, it's because I've given this high level of standard for 6 years that I've earned this cohesive back and forth. And so whether we really start going, you're not giving me the energy, or you're not holding, the relationship to the standard that it should be held to, let that be the deciding factor why the separation happens. But at the same time, leaving the opportunity that if they want to elevate their game and they want to bring it to the level, like, come on in, like, I welcome you, but you need to show me that we're on the journey towards that beneficial. I won't say 50-50 because I don't believe relationships are 50-50, but equally giving, equal to the relationship. I think that's where we can start finding strength in boundaries, or types of relationships, or those types of things, when we start talking about empowering or disempowering relationships.
And I'm really glad that you touched on your relationship with your employees and even with your wife. And I've seen, some of the posts from you and your wife, and just from an outside perspective, it really looks like such a beautiful container that you guys have created for each other's personal growth as you guys grow together and on the same page. So I actually I wanted to read a Instagram post, and it was actually a post that your wife made. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, it's a post that your wife Amy made, and I wanted to read it because it was so beautiful. It said, I just wanted to give a shout out to my husband, soul partner, and the king of my universe. To say that I am proud to be his wife could not adequately describe just how truly grateful and blessed I feel every single day, having the honor and privilege of being his chosen life partner. Day in and day out, I watch this man in awe completely redefine what I know about integrity, loyalty, sincerity, passion, dedication, perseverance, compassion, generosity, selflessness, ambition, relentlessness, and so much more. You, my love, are such a beautiful gift to this world. Keep shining, baby. So that's from Amy, his wife. And yeah, what an emotional thing to really truly feel. And I think it's beautiful that you're allowing yourself to feel those words that she expressed to you, because it's so clear to me that that came from such a genuine experience, many experiences that she's had with you. And that to me is true, deep connection. And that to me is like treasure inside of a treasure chest. So I want to hear from you. How does it feel to have a partner that feels that gratitude just to be your chosen life partner?
This last weekend, I had my first pro bodybuilding show with the federation that I compete with, and it went really well. And my general manager, my wife, was there, and I get off stage, and she's looking at me with just this. Um, my parents have looked at me that way,
Mm.
It was just,
Adoration.
she's just, and I said, "What are you thinking?" And she said, "My admiration grows for you every time I see you up there." And I said, "Please give me more." And she said, "Ken, I've watched you hold yourself to a standard for the last 45 weeks while also launching a business, while also growing your community, while also that you had every reason to be a rude boss or a shitty friend or exhausted and not treat me great or not hold our standard of communication and relationship. Like you had every reason to, and you didn't. And then you went up and you performed at the level that you did. You're you're raising standards, and I think that if I can live away, if I can wake up before she gets up every morning, if I can work after she goes to bed, if I'm at a position now where we actually have some employees that live with us, and they have a little girl, and my work ethic over the last 45 weeks has grown a business where now I get to pay for that Christmas for that little girl. I get to pay for insurance for the next little girl going into this next year. I get to give her parents security and love and support. I get to give Amy just this new standard of what a husband should be for her just from my actions. I'm not asking anybody else to bring anything else to the table, just me holding myself to a standard that then empowers others to go, wow, if that's possible, then maybe I'll start journaling about the things that I haven't wanted to journal about, or maybe I'll start dealing with the things that I haven't wanted to deal with, or maybe I'll learn how to communicate with my wife better because I'm not there yet, or maybe I'll be a better dad to my little girl because if I can just keep doing the standard where everyone else starts questioning the way they're doing things and how can they elevate, like then leading from the front, that's what I'm wanting to live from is be a standard in my actions that shows other people that they can do the same authentic version of themselves in that.
That's really beautiful, and I believe that true leadership does lead by example, and so it's really beautiful to see you doing that. I have a potentially hard question for you. As someone that holds such high standards for yourself, and you really set the standard in your own life. We're all human and we're not perfect. So, how do you navigate when you yourself don't hit your own standard? When you have an off day, when you drop the ball with something? Do you deal with self-criticism? Do you deal with just do you deal with self-criticism? And if so, how do you navigate through that and not beat yourself up from it? How do you actually learn from it and extend grace to yourself through it?
I'm a heavy content audio person, and Tom Bilyeu is a guy that I spend a lot of time listening to. And he's just today, I was listening to him, and he was talking about one of our largest issues is that we're too narrow in our scope of perspective. So we hold ourselves to how perfect we can be in 24 hours. And if we just hold back a little bit and look at ourselves at 30 days, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, we don't have to go too far into this, but I'm just now on the 11th year side of a 10-year drug addiction. So I was heavily addicted to cocaine in my early 20s. And so if I did my perspective of 10 years, maybe I'm tired today and maybe I need a rest day. But 10 years, I'm astronomically so far ahead of the cocaine addiction that one day is okay, a week's okay, 30 days is okay. Whatever we need to do to get back onto the thing. I realized if I was actually my greatest cheerleader and not my hardest critique, then we could always end up getting back on the bandwagon.
That's so good because we often get so focused and consumed with where we're at and where we're going next. And I think one thing that a lot of people probably struggle with right now is comparison and this lack mentality of, I'm not there yet, or comparing themselves to where other people are on social media. And all you see around you is what you haven't done, how many followers you don't have, how much money you don't have in your account, and it's very easy to get into that lack mentality just by comparison. comparison. We've heard it 1,000 times. Comparison is the thief of joy. So, what do you do in your life, and how do you help your clients navigate staying in abundance versus a lack mentality?
Gonna say again, change perspective. I could 100%, if I gave 5% focus to seeing what I'm lacking in, I could find plenty. There's plenty. But then if I just spent the equal amount of time looking at how graceful, like I woke up today, my wife was in my bed, there was a roof, I did have a fridge full of food. I am living a dream that I'm bodybuilding for a living and helping people grow a livelihood. Like I've equally spent time living out of my truck. Like if I really do open perspective and go like plenty of opportunities for lack, but if I can find 1 ounce of abundance, mustard seed can turn into a mountain. Like all of the little things that if you look in any of our studies across the world and we just focus on the mustard seed, over time we can turn that mustard seed into anything. But lack ends up being, I think we're unfair in we talked about comparing ourselves. Jordan Peterson is another man I listen to a lot. And he says, you see the guy in California in the red Ferrari and the hot blonde driving down. What you don't realize is that she's got a coke addiction and he's ready to wrap his car around the next light pole. Like you think you know what's going on from what we can see, but you actually don't want his own hell. Like you don't. I've got my own to deal with. And so the comparison ends up being, if we can change comparison to maybe more lighthouse, like if you want those things, let's figure out how to get there and let's see in the direction, but don't say that you want what they have because you don't know enough. There's not enough information there for you to be able to say compare like I have plenty of people that I would say I look towards in a lighthouse. Business people I listen to, Simon Sinek or Alex Hormozy, or like I have people that I lighthouse, but it's because they're showing me the way, not because I should contrast myself or compare myself to what they have or what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it just goes back to recognizing that everybody's on their own journey and their own timeline. And there's a lot of people that feel, it feels like it's an overnight success, but in reality, they've been working for 10 years behind the scenes before they get that overnight success. So I think it's important just to kind of, if you find yourself in that comparison, to reground yourself, get back into gratitude, look at how far you've already come and say, what is just the next step that I can take? Because I find a lot of people get really overwhelmed by looking at the big picture of where they want to go, where they're excited about going even, but it can feel really overwhelming on a Tuesday at 3 o'clock when you feel far away, right? So I think just narrowing it down and saying, okay, what is the next step I can take? And then just taking some positive action for yourself, which is kind of what I want to get into now, is habits and how habits truly do dictate where we end up in life. So, how do you help your clients create healthy habits? And I think before even the healthy habits, how do you help them become aware of what habits are serving them or not? And yeah, just what are some thoughts that you want to share surrounding around habits, our daily habits?
First and foremost, recognizing the habits that you have, good or bad. Let's not talk about change. Let's just simply do recognition scenario. I think a large part of our day-to-day life, we believe we're actually choosing, but it's actually a lot more unconscious, just running kind of timelines that we don't have control of in general. We're slave to a lot of brain chemicals. We're slave to a lot of uncontrollable things that go inside of us. And so first going, what are my current habits? And then equally going, where do I want to get to? And now let's talk about the delta. Like really, you want to get up in the morning, you want to add a gym regimen, you want to do nutrition, you want to do this. Like in actuality, if we started today and asked to start on Monday, I'm going to implement so much to you that it's going to be so overwhelming that In 30 days, you're going to go, no, it's too much. And so they don't find success because they want to change too many habits or think that they have the ability to do too many habits too fast. And if I just slow down and when I start working with clients, I say, hey guys, I do want you to know that I'm on the side of performance and lifestyle. That doesn't happen in 4 days because you decide that you want to jump on a program. Or even if we were to do performance and lifestyle, that the first program that I'm going to send you is going to be the perfect program because I'm so just this brilliant scenario where I know exactly what you need. Like that's terrible for me to run from too. So I think when we first start, I tackle the most impactful habits. A lot of the business guys that I talk about say you should make choices or you should do decisions that have the greatest impact first. And so I start usually with sleep and stress. Those are usually where I move from. So before we even do exercise, before we even do nutrition, before we even do things like that, we start talking about your stressors, good and bad. And then we definitely dive into your sleep regimen. Most people's sleep is where they're screwing themselves up completely. And so they're okay with coffee or whatever energy supplement they want to decide they want to head down in the morning, and they sacrifice sleep and then go, but I'm going to change everything else in between my day. And it's like we're starting from a broken foundation. So habits initially, I think, are recognition. And then where do we want to get to? And then figure out the delta we need to do and get a game plan to get closer to the delta. And then realizing that if I'm being honest, my habits change pretty regularly. My habits 3 years ago, I would call them like a walk in the park. Now my habits now are a lot more advanced and da 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 da. And so as you elevate, your habits should elevate also. And then all of a sudden you can adopt new habits and it's a lot more digestive. I talk about digestive change a lot. We should change as much as you're okay with without feeling overwhelmed. Nice and easy, where you're excited, it feels good, more change, seeking more, seeking more, seeking more. Because the minute we go into overload, the body's triggers, traumas go, nope, I'm done, I'm out. And so I think it's patience, clarity, guidance. Those are some things that we should really start focusing in on, especially going into like 2023. If you could change your habits by summer of 2023, I think that's a great goal. Most of us do like New Year's resolutions, and we're like, if it doesn't work by the end of January, I'm out. It's like, oh gosh.
That's so true. Yeah, that's so true. And I love it because what I hear in the pathway that you're laying out for people is longevity and actually creating a lifestyle change. And, that's the biggest thing that I hope people kind of get from this habit talk is really learning how to do it in a sustainable way that is truly going to, like you mentioned, you're going to be changing these habits and you're like, yes, I'm feeling better. I'm elevating. Let's do more. So rather than this like logical, practical, oh, I need to do better in my life, it's coming from this inward version of you that's like, this is the best version of me. This is when I feel my best. This is when I'm most inspired. So now it's no longer this tug of war of, oh, I got to make myself get up in the morning or make myself work out. It's like, yeah, I don't really want to do it, but I feel great. So I'm going to do it. And when I feel that when that intention changes, it makes it so much easier to stick to those healthy habits. Speaking on stress, what are some things that people can do to relieve stress? Because we know that stress causes inflammation. Inflammation is a root cause of many diseases and sicknesses that people go through. So if we can get it at the root, which often is stress, what can we do to lower that stress in our lives? Before we hear Kenneth's answer, I wanted to share with you guys a simple thing that I do often to reduce stress. It's called my mini reset. I'll do this any time of the day when I feel like I need to lower my stress levels and come back to loving awareness. I actually just did this before coming to edit this podcast. Put my phone in the other room and then I laid down and took some deep breaths. I gave my mind time to be still and to disconnect from the world. If I'm out and about and I notice my inner world is running a little too high, meaning my inner energy feels like it's getting on the anxious side, I will get to my destination and park, and then I'll do the same thing. I take some time to be still, quiet the mind, breathe, and really give myself a reset. I tune into my inner world and check in with myself to make sure that my actions moving forward are conscious and intentional. Something that really helps me to do that is my number one absolute favorite products by Pure Nutrition, which I've told you guys about before, which is called Serenity Gummies. They are little microdose gummies that contain full spectrum CBD, L-theanine, reishi, and ashwagandha. You can take these at any time of the day and they will lower stress, support relaxation without drowsiness, and enhance the ability to be present and tune in to your inner world. I especially like to take Serenity before something like a recovery day where I'll do 20 minutes in the sauna followed by 4 minutes in the cold plunge while simultaneously incorporating breathing and meditation. It's also something great to incorporate for your reading and journaling times. Try Serenity today at www.curenutrition.com/Emily Hayden and save 20% at checkout. Again, that's CURED nutrition.com/Emily Hayden and coupon code Emily Hayden at checkout to save you 20%. Now, let's see what Kenneth has to say about this topic.
I very much hope I give you an answer you're not prepared on this one, because my authentic method, I really do try and tackle stress in a different way than most do. So I'm going to say you should not focus on controlling what stresses you. You should find things that start to charge you up.
Oh my gosh, I'm
Most
living
of
for
us are
this.
just running from an empty battery. Yes, we're moving from down here, so everything stresses us. We don't spend enough time on, like, I wake up one day and I'm dragging stressed out of my mind. I'm messaging Amy like, I need 3 hours of personal you and me time. Like, I need to charge me up. Because like I can't tackle my stress if I'm moving from an empty place. Like, it just doesn't even work. So first, don't tackle your stressor. Tackle your battery charger. Find the things that, yes, because now if I'm here and I'm dealing with my stressors, I'm a whole lot more powerful than stress and stress and stress. So recharge the battery. Don't control the stressors. Yeah.
Wow, that is the most incredible answer. And I love it because we know cognitively what we focus on, we create more of. Right. And so I love that you use that even when you're tackling stress. You're like, okay, stop thinking about the stress, like go and do what recharges you. So I'm curious to hear from you. What are a few things that personally recharge you?
Exercise. I'm not gonna lie. Exercise is a big one. It's a regular place that, um, I believe we are a lot stronger if we're running into our battles than if our battles are chasing us. And so, because I feel good in exercise, I go every day and I challenge myself. I'm the one conquering myself every day. I'm strong. The gym is huge for me, number one. That might not be everyone. A lot of people are like, hey, that's not where it's at. Cool. But a physical something is where I start. Um, Time with my wife, and we talk a lot about presentness. So time isn't, it's not in very much mass right now. Me and Amy are very busy. We don't have a lot of time. We've each with our we've actually decided with our therapist that we have to start scheduling our time. So now in our Google calendars, there's like Amy Kenneth time, and it's non-negotiable, and it's not getting scheduled, and no one gets to be in those hours, and no one gets this, and she doesn't get a reschedule, and there's like non-negotiables. So time with my wife of being present, not coexisting, both scrolling on phones, present.
I think that's a lot of people. I think that they struggle to recognize that time next to each other doesn't necessarily mean time with each other. So I love that you mentioned that because I think presence is what creates connection. And for a lot of people that may be with their spouse or partner and or they're feeling super disconnected, it's most likely because you're not present and you're not actually connecting with them. So I love that you mentioned that. Is there one more that you have?
To sitting in my purpose. Authentic, I would say, is my current purpose, but and I think a lot of people really do lack energy or the ability to get through stress because they're not working through or spending time in a purpose. Some people that might be helping world hunger, or that might be wanting to help the local community around you, or that might be a nonprofit. Or Amy's is animals. Amy spending
Aw.
time with animals is very purpose for her. So she owns a dog walking or animal sitting business, and just being able to bring that level of value for her with animals is time that is purpose for her. So exercise, time with my community, my wife, my friends, my coworkers, that intimate time is really important for me. And then time in my purpose. Those are really where I would say I recharge my battery.
I love those. I can definitely align with all of them, but for sure the exercise for me. I recently this year started getting much more into MMA, Muay Thai, Jiu Jitsu, and that has been such an incredible passion for me. And I'm currently in California, so it's been a few months since I've been doing it. But the other day at the gym, there was this guy holding mitts and this coach, and he was like, "Hey, like just let's do some real quick." And I was like, "Oh God, it's been a while," and I was honestly having a pretty hard day and I start doing mitts with him. We only did like 10 minutes and I immediately felt better and I immediately felt empowered again and strong again. It's like I got this reminder that like I am strong and like no one can mess with me, and it kind of just really reignited that strength and that confidence that I needed inside. And so those are the things that I believe you're speaking of that we really need to prioritize in our life and make sure that we're doing for ourselves because we can get so boggled down with the stresses of life and even the good ones of where we want to go in life. And that we can sometimes ignore the things that our soul really needs. So, one thing that I would like to touch on is you were mentioning how living in your purpose is one of those things for you. And what I heard from you was saying how, whatever that is for you, whether it's, helping with hunger or animals or something. And what that reflects to me is taking the focus off of yourself and doing something that actually serves the community and serves others. And I want to get into that because I feel like we are in such a time in this world and in society where we are so self-focused. We are so selfish. This everything's about us. Everything's about, building our following or creating a name for ourselves. And we're even like, with the recent I think they're called maybe avatars or like the AI images that are coming out. I've just had a lot of thoughts and feelings on that because what I see again is us glorifying ourselves. And I know that not everybody has that intention with it, but what I'm just seeing across the board in society as a whole is so much glorification of the self. And what I think is really dangerous in that is that when you get to the end of yourself and you're actually not connected to others and to community and to your purpose, where is that going to lead you? It can get really hard and really dark sometimes when you are so focused on yourself because what about when you're failing? What about when things aren't going well? So what are your thoughts when it comes to the importance of community, the importance of feeling connected to others? Clearly that's a huge core value in your life. So, what would you say created that desire or that core value for you in your life and in your business?
I hope to not hurt anybody's feelings in this first. So I'm going to preface that. We are pretty stuck in ourselves selfishly, but unfortunately, we're also not usually enough motivation for us to get ourselves to do the shit that's hard. I had a bodybuilding dream. I had a business. I had things. And if I just went, I have it, I have it, I have it. And on week number 40 at 4 a.m., when I got to get up and do cardio and I got to get up and do my session and I got to get up and do this, and I was not enough motivation to get my ass out of bed. But when I looked over there and Amy's willing to write the stuff that you just read in this podcast, and she hears that alarm going off, and she starts hearing me press sleep, how much does she really trust that I'm going to get up and do the stuff that's actually really hard, that's actually going to change our life, that's actually going to make a change? So now, because I took it outside of myself and I went, that right there is going to be the reason I get up and go do it. And then I walk through my house and I look before I go out to my garage where my cardio equipment is. And my coworker's in that room sleeping with him and his wife, and his daughter's in that room right there. And I don't want to do this cardio. They're the reason I do the cardio. So now in the moment where if we're selfish, 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 and then life gets hard, you're probably going to find some form or fashion. I won't say quit, but some form or fashion that's going to lighten the load for you, make it a little easier. But if you have something outside of yourself, you have a purpose outside of yourself, that's why you're doing the thing. Now you don't get to quit on them. Now you don't get to stop when it's hard on them. So now, if we would open our center of focus to not just us, but outside of us, it's greater than us. I've been hashtagging here recently. It's bigger than I am. My community knows that I'm not going to be the one to press sleep. My wife is going to be the one that knows I'm not going to press sleep. So if we can start focusing on a purpose outside of ourselves, I actually think it gives us strength to get through the things that would break us, that would get us to quit, that would get us to stop. Now all of a sudden we find power that we didn't have before.
What you're expressing is so powerful and full of so much truth. In college, I studied sociology, and we studied what was the number one factor that allowed people to be successful with the goals that they set for themselves, whether it was fitness and health or business. And it was accountability and a sense of community and purpose. So, that accountability piece coming from your community is what's truthfully creating that extra level of, like you said, when you don't have it, being able to show up for others. And it's literally how we were hardwired as humans. We were hardwired to be in a pact, to be in community. And I think when you realize that, you can really understand how important it is to not be so self-centered and self-focused. And I even had a friend who shared with me that, during a really, really difficult and dark moment where they didn't feel that life was worth living for themselves, they looked up and they saw their daughter and they said, but for her it is. And so they continued, and so I think it really just kind of gives more experience and depth to what you were expressing, that sometimes, a lot of the times, we are not enough. But if we can feel connected to someone else, it's like that can get us through those really difficult moments when we feel like we don't have it in us. So thank you for sharing that and spreading light on that, because I think that can be a piece that can really help people out of some dark moments, is just to open your eyes, look around, and find that one person. If you guys are watching on YouTube, you see Frankie next to me. There's been so many times I look at Frankie or Vinny and I'm like, you guys deserve an incredible life, and it may sound silly to some people. They're my dogs, but they're my children, and I want to create the best possible life that I can for them. So I think that community accountability is so important. And, that's why I think you see professional athletes, right? You see the best of the best athletes who have coaches. Are they talented and skilled enough to do it on their own? Probably. But when you have a coach and someone that is there to keep you accountable and have that outside perspective, that's truthfully where you can get to that next level. And I even saw someone at a bodybuilding show recently who they did nationals, they prepped themselves, and they said that they got there and they were very graciously humbled. And they said, yeah, you know what? I need a coach. It's just very clear. The people with coaches are doing better. They have that outside eye. So, what do you have to say to clients that feel like they're in a rut? They feel like they're in a rut with their health, their fitness, and they're struggling, but they feel like they know what they're doing. And so they're kind of justifying not working with somebody. What would be your advice to them to help get them out of that rut?
I don't think we're dealing with the same issues that health and fitness were dealing with 10 years ago. I would equally say after COVID is probably another time that the world in general is a little different than it was before. Technology has definitely increased our demand. The demand on, I would even say, like the 1980s, 1990s human in general, from sensory overload or information or comparison, who you're comparing yourself with in social media. There's so many more external factors on the human in general than there was 10 or 15 years ago. So if we just took the same old way of thinking of just hard grind more, and we think more exercise, or we think harder diet, or we think more cardio, or we just ultimately keep thinking that if we can just keep loading ourselves, that the body will slave itself into success. And I actually think if we can dive into and look at a coach going, this whole person's existence is to figure out how to do the problem better, then you get to go, yeah, maybe I could research, but it would take me 10 hours to get 1 hour worth of benefit when I could actually just ask the coach and get 1 hour benefit and 1 hour benefit and I get 9 hours back. Like, let's really talk about efficiency here, where the human has too much demand for you to believe that you can be a parent, a friend, expertise in whatever your living is, deal with your emotional health, deal with all those types of things, and you're going to learn how to get healthy. I think it's just, it's not efficient now. And also, if you're really honest and just go, you know what, I don't want to go with a coach, but I want to go with a program. There's $100, there's $50 programs, there's whatever you end up needing. And if you were just to do my time, it takes you 10 hours to do research. And let's say you make $50 an hour. That's $500 that you're doing and hopefully finding what you want to find in your 10 hours. When if you would just pay the $50 something to somebody else, you're at least getting some targeted information that you can go, yep, that $50 worked. No, that $50 didn't work. You can make changes. So I think if we just looked at health and fitness with a coach or performance with a coach and just did efficiency, it's so much smarter for you to work with someone at an expertise level than it is for you to just bounce around in the dark thinking that TikTok or whatever is going to show you how to get in a health manner. It's not. You're going to just barrier after barrier after barrier. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And I remembered when I hired my trainer, my in person trainer, I'm an IFBB pro. I was prepping for my pro shows and I hired a trainer because not because I needed someone to show me how to do it or because I didn't know what I was doing, right? I wanted that literally 1%. I wanted the 2%. And honestly, he's such an incredible trainer. He probably gave me like 40%.
Mhm.
But,
Yes.
I was there for the last 3 reps when maybe I would have, turned my shoulders in a little bit and he had me have it
Mhm.
perfectly, right? So those little things really do make such a big difference. And even just earlier when we were talking about stress, right? It's like you immediately go to, let's not look at the stress, let's actually recharge you. And I think those outside perspective shifts are what people need to actually create the true change that they are seeking. I want to circle this back to a little bit of the beginning of the conversation where we were talking about being your authentic self. What do you believe are some blocks that people may experience from being their authentic selves? What do you think holds people back?
Mine initially started with childhood stuff. I grew up in North Texas. I played football. I was Friday Night Lights athlete. I lived a very niche, specific style of lifestyle, and it gave me success in my little town for those time of my life. And then I was equally learning that no fault of theirs, but my parents implemented beliefs like they were right. They weren't just the way that people thought my parents' beliefs were right. So then when I went out into the world and I started experiencing so much else, I went, oh my God, I at least have to start questioning myself of realizing maybe what I was taught or learned isn't right. So kind of blanketing that foundation away, then I started trying to become versions of myself that was going to give me highs.
Wow.
So I became the partier, I became the whatever because I saw a title of a representation and I was like, that's what I want. So I became that. And then it didn't fulfill anything. It was just another high, but
Mhm.
that high didn't last. And I wasn't actually getting fulfilled. I was just wasting time. I was getting older. Money was getting harder. Relationships were getting worse. And I was like, there's got to be some other way. Then I started really asking myself. I read Awaken the Giant from Tony Robbins, and it was after a bad breakup. I had spent some time in an abusive relationship, and it was just a bad scenario. And I walked out and I went, okay, clearly I'm not where I want to be. Do something different. And Tony Robbins, Awaken the Giant, just started rocking my world. So I started diving in and reading and listening and getting into, you know, Jocko Willink's Extreme Ownership, and I started getting into um, a lot of different mindsets and pathways and thoughts that I wasn't aware of initially. So once I started taking in content that was different than myself, I started going, ooh, I like 5% of that, and I like 10% of that, and I like 4% of that, and I love 20% of that. And once I started becoming a little bit putting it together, where I was like, wow, I feel good, and I'm stacking good days together. And um, I used to tell Amy that she should wake up every day and make decisions that when she went to bed and looked at herself in the mirror, she was okay with who was going to go to bed that night. And if you were okay with who was going to go to bed that night from the decisions that you made and how you showed up in the world, how you treated people and those types of things, then all of a sudden we can start stacking really good, authentic qualities in ourselves because we are self-love. We're starting to head down the self-love direction where I like how I interact with people, and I like how I interact with myself, and I like the verbiage that I use with myself, and I like the images that I have in my head. And all of a sudden I started really, really feeling good in how I was showing up in the world. And once I started feeling that, I just pressed gas. I pressed NOS. I wanted more. I researched more. I started Googling more. I started heading down the direction because I started feeling that mustard seed of self love. And once I started feeling that mustard seed of self love, it was just like, here come the dreads and here the toenails and everything. Like, here's who I am because, like, I'm alive. I mean, I'm sitting here just getting energy talking about this because I feel it's so powerful when you
Mm.
can truly like look at that self mirror every day and go, I dig who that person is right there. You keep doing it. The self nucks game. Like, I think we should be self nucksing ourselves as much as we can.
I love what you're mentioning about giving ourselves self nucks, right? I try to sometimes imagine what would I say to my best friend if they were here right now. I have definitely struggled with having such a high standard for myself. Some would maybe call it perfectionism. That sometimes I do fall into self criticism. And it's like this automatic thing, this automatic self talk where I just go straight into that. So sometimes a good self awareness piece for me is recognizing when I'm doing it and then asking myself if this is my best friend who came to me and said, Emily, I messed up. Or like, Emily, I didn't hit the mark again. Like, what would you say to her right now in this moment? And being able to kind of take myself out of it and be that best friend for myself has allowed me to develop a new kind of self talk. And that's one thing I just wanted to mention because I think there's a lot of people that probably want that level of self love where they look in the mirror and they're, giving themselves nucks. And I think the pathway there sometimes can feel like you're far away, but you're really not if you'll just start to be more self aware to your current patterns and then simply choose in those moments to shift how you change up for yourself. And I will say, self love, man, it manifests in so many different ways. And I find that our most intimate relationships and people around us really do reflect how we feel about ourselves because we will truly tolerate what we feel we are worth or not. And I think that is a hard reality to come to as well. But the more that you focus on the things that recharge you, like you mentioned, and the more that you fill yourself up in that way, the stronger you're going to become. So, just to kind of wrap everything up here with what we've been talking about, I really want to, just encourage people to take kind of this advice and to recharge yourself and to catch that momentum, no matter how small or, what action it is. Just get into those habits that fill yourself up and surround yourself with others doing the same, even if it's just one person, because truthfully, that's how you create change in your life. It's not this big, overarching one day success. It's the little moments every single day. So, Kenneth, you have been incredible to learn from today. And I just really appreciate you sharing your energy and your story and your experience with us. I wanted to ask, is there anything else that's on your mind, maybe from this conversation, or maybe something that you're thinking about today that you would like to leave the listeners with?
As listeners, you all need to realize and know Emily and I both experience the same struggles you do every damn day. The only difference for us to be able to move through those struggles are the tools and processes that we put into place to help us give us strength through those moments. If you're struggling in life right now, search for tools and processes. This is not a woo woo. I thought myself into there's no weeds in the garden, there's no weeds in the garden, there's no weeds in the garden. This was a what weeds? How do I kill it? How do I get rid of it? How do I replant flowers? How do I this? It's tools and processes. We struggle every day. The self-talk, the self this. I take recharge days. I take self-love days. I do it. This is a journey that we experience every single day. We're not any better, any stronger, any of those types of things. We've just implemented tools, processes, rules for ourselves to have strength through those moments.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. I don't think I have anything to add to that. I think that just was perfectly said. So, you guys know the drill. If you enjoyed today's show, please do us a favor and share it on your Instagram stories. You can tag both myself and Kenneth. All of Kenneth's information will be linked down below. So, make sure to check out his social medias, his website if you guys are interested in working with him. I hear his podcast will be launching soon. So, please stay tuned for that. And
Yes.
don't hesitate to reach out to
Yes.
either him or myself. We would love to
Yes.
hear from you
Mhm.
guys and continue this conversation. So thank you guys, and I will see you in the next episode of Evolve with Emily. Bye, everyone.